problem. Y'all going to be the people who told me. All right, tell
No,
me.
but right now you sound as clear as a bell.
Thank you so
You
much.
do. Sound
Cost
perfect.
was a
Okay, here we go.
fortune, but yeah, I needed a special computer.
How's that?
Good. Looking good.
You can all see that. Hey, Monique.
Hello.
Hi, Monique.
Good.
Hey, Ruth, Eliza, and Sarah and their families got together yesterday.
What'd you say?
Eliza and her family and my daughter and her family got together yesterday.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. Oh, that's wonderful.
With all the
Oh,
kids and the husbands and yeah.
Were they celebrating Hanukkah together?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Oh,
Oh, I'm so happy I was able to give you my niece's family because they're wonderful people. And I'm just so happy. That's good for her.
And
That's great.
they're meeting other people through them too.
That's wonderful. Yeah, they get lots of connections. They've been there. And of course, her husband's from England. And now that she's been there a good 5 years or so, she's pretty acclimated to the British way of life.
Yeah. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm always happy to please in any way I can.
Thank you very much.
And happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Light in the world. Nice. Awesome. Who wants to start tonight? We're going to do Joseph, part 2 of 4. The guy I love out of the Torah. My favorite guy out of Jacob.
Let somebody else start today. I'll just listen.
I'll read.
Okay, go
very
ahead.
nice, Monique. Go ahead.
Monique.
Then Solomon woke. It was a dream. He went to Jerusalem and stood before the Ark of the Covenant of the Sovereign. There he offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being. After that, he gave a banquet for all his officials. Sometime later, 2 prostitutes presented themselves before the king. One said, "Please, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house. She was there with me when I gave birth to a child. 3 days later, this woman also had a child. We were alone. No one else was with us. Just the 2 of us in the house. During the night, she lay in it and her son died. She got up in the middle of the night while your maidservant was asleep, took my child and put it in her bosom and put her dead child in mine. When I got up in the morning to nurse my son, I saw that he was dead. But when I looked more closely by the morning light, I saw that the dead baby was not the one born to me."
Wow.
"No, your son is dead and mine is alive."
Well, I think I missed something. Here we go. I'm sorry. There you go.
The other woman broke in. "No, the living one is my son. Yours is the dead one." But the first insisted, "No, the dead boy is yours. Mine is the live one." Thus they continued to argue before the king. The king said, "One says the live one is my son, the dead one is yours." And the other says, "No, your son is dead and mine is alive." So the king said, "Fetch me a sword." They brought a sword into the king's presence. And the king said, "Cut the living child in 2 and give half to the one and half to the other."
This is awful.
But the real mother was churning with compassion for her son, so she pleaded with the king, "Please, my lord, give her the living bairn. Whatever you do, don't kill him." But the other one said, "No, it will neither be yours nor mine. Cut it in 2. The king spoke up, "On no account kill the child. Give him to the first woman. She is the real mother." When Israel heard of the decision of the king, they held him in awe, seeing that he had within him divine wisdom to do justice. And King Solomon was not king all over Israel.
I don't like that story.
Well, it's very famous. They quote
It
this
is.
all the time. So
Yep.
many. They
I don't
teach
know
it in
why I
Hebrew
never
school.
remembered this. So maybe I blocked it
I
out
do.
for some reason.
Yeah,
They
I
teach
never
this in
really look
Hebrew
at the. Yeah, I never read this stuff really that much, but I
Wow.
always knew this story from when I was
didn't.
little.
I don't know. Maybe I didn't want to know.
Well, you heard the expression, the wisdom of Solomon?
Yes,
This is where it comes from.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't remembered this, but I don't know. I block out things I don't want to remember.
That was the full reading, right? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a
Yep.
real gem. That's the wisdom. Yeah, as Dr. Ed said, the wisdom of Solomon. And the woman who had the child, the real child, said, "Give it to the other woman. Just let the child live."
Yeah, thank God. I mean, the
Yeah.
thought of cutting him in two, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't going to happen, though. I mean, it's just the story. It's
I
metaphoric
know, I know.
to
I
teach
don't
the
know.
lesson of
I take
Solomon's
things too
wisdom.
literally sometimes. I don't
It shows that the one that stole the baby was mean and bitter and would rather see the baby dead than to have any part of it, But the other
Yeah,
woman, was willing, the real mother was willing to give the whole child to her.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Life.
But
Yeah,
then
I
Solomon
suppose it
makes the
is
decision
beautiful.
to,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it's a great story. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. Do you want to continue? Now we're going to Genesis.
and
We're
the
going right
connection, oh, so I was just going to say the
go ahead.
connection with the Pasha, too, with the week's port is, the king had the dream. When
Yeah.
Pharaoh had the dream, and here Solomon had
All right.
that's the connection.
Okay, should I go ahead?
ceremony.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
At the end of 2 years' time, this is Genesis 41 1-13. At the end of 2 years' time, Pharaoh had a dream. There he was, standing by the Nile, when 7 cows came up out of the Nile, handsome and fat. They grazed among the reeds, and now 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, repulsive and gaunt. They stood beside the other cows at the bank of the Nile. The cows that were repulsive and gaunt then ate the cows that were handsome and fat, and Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep and dreamt a second time. This time, 7 ears of grain were growing on a single stalk. They were healthy and good. And then 7 ears of grain, thin, scorched by the east wind, grew after them. The 7 ears of grain that were thin and scorched by the east wind then swallowed the 7 ears of grain that were healthy and full, and woke up. And Pharaoh woke up, behold, it was a dream. In the morning, his spirit was troubled. He put out a call for all the soothsayer priests and sages of Egypt. Pharaoh related his dream to them, but no one could interpret this for Pharaoh. The chief cupbearer then spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "This day I acknowledge my sins." Pharaoh had grown angry at his servants, so he put me under guard in the house of the captain of the guard, me and the chief baker. We dreamt a dream on a single night, he and I, each dreamer of our own with its own meaning. Now there was with us a Hebrew lad, a slave of the captain of the guard. When we related our dreams to him, he interpreted for us, interpreting each one's dream according to its own meaning. And as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. Pharaoh restored me to my position, and him Pharaoh hanged. So Pharaoh sent to summon Joseph. They hurried him from the pit. He shaved, changed his clothing, and came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I dreamt a dream, and there is no one to interpret it, but I heard this about you. You have but to hear a dream to interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh by saying, "No, it is God who will account for Pharaoh's well-being." Pharaoh then spoke to Joseph, "In my dream I stood on the bank of the Nile, and lo, 7 cows went up out of the river, fat and handsome. They grazed among the reeds, and lo, 7 other cows, poor, truly repulsive, emaciated, came up after them, and never have I seen so repulsive in all the land of Egypt. The emaciated and repulsive cows had ate up the first cows, the fat ones. Once they had digested them, one could not tell that they had digested them. They were as repulsive as before, whereupon I awoke. Then in my other dream, I saw that 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, full and good. Then sprouting after them were 7 ears of grain, dried up, thin, scorched by the east wind. 7 thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 goodly ears. But when I told the soothsayer priest, none could explain it to me.
Oh, wait a second. Let me just fix this. What did I do? Ah, there you go. I'm sorry. There you go.
Joseph then said to Pharaoh, "Pharaoh's dream is one. What God is doing, God has revealed to Pharaoh. The 7 goodly cows are 7 years, and the 7 godly ears of grain are 7 years. It is all one dream. The 7 cows coming up after them that were emaciated and repulsive are 7 years, and the 7 years of grain that were thin and scorched by the east wind, they are 7 years of famine. This is the very thing I told Pharaoh. What God is doing, God has shown to Pharaoh. Look, 7 years are coming of great plenty in all the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine are coming up after them. and all the plenty in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. The famine will consume the land. The plenty will no longer be in the land because of the famine that will follow. So harsh will it be. Pharaoh's dream was repeated 2 times because the matter has been fixed by God, and God is making haste to accomplish it. Let Pharaoh now select a man who is discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh act and appoint administrators over the land, and let him take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. Have them gather up all the surplus food of those good years that are coming, and let them store up grain in the cities under Pharaoh's control and put it under guard. The food will then be reserved for the land during the 7 years of famine that will prevail in the land of Egypt, thus the land will not perish through famine. This advice seemed good to Pharaoh and his officials, and Pharaoh said to his officials, "Is there anyone like this to be found, a man with the Spirit of God in him?"
Well, we need to stop here, I think. This is amazing stuff here, right? I mean, first Joseph gets out of prison. Hallelujah. And then he says, God, I'm not going to interpret the dream. God's going to interpret the dream. God will tell you what's going on. And it's just amazing. I love that guy's faith.
You know what's interesting that you mentioned that, Achi? You know, I was thinking of that too, the fact that he said from God, right? When he was younger, like when he had the dreams that he told his brothers, like he didn't say at the time then that, like, you know, it was God, like, that is telling me this, but yet maybe he was thinking it at the time, but it didn't, nobody realized it, and because he didn't say it, and that's why they thought he was so arrogant. Like if God was saying that, if he said that God told me someday that I'm gonna be, it would be different, you know?
But you know what I look at this is that I think he changed over time. I think that
Yeah.
he wasn't as probably I don't think he believed in, well, I know he believed in God, but I think he had a different perspective of God as he got older. He's got wiser is what I'm saying.
Plus the tough lessons of being in prison and
That's right.
thrown
That's
in
what I'm
the
saying.
pit.
I think he was wiser from all that he went through. That's what I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is like all of us. There you go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dr. Ed? Dr. Ed, are you there? Is your computer working?
Yes, it's working. I'm thinking. I mean, it's what I'd like to put this into perspective is that he's in Egypt and he's he's establishing himself in Egypt, and I just cannot contemplate. He's going to die, and things are going to get real bad, and it just seems to me that someone needs to ensure your own personal memory for whatever you do on this earth, because if you don't do that, people are going to forget about you real quick. They say that, and I don't know why I'm thinking this, except when Joseph dies and the Jews become slaves. But in the near future, all I can think of is in 2 generations, nobody is going to know you existed unless you do something to make ensure that your memory is going to continue. And that's all I can say here. And that keeps thinking about it. On Passover time, we say people forgot about Joseph. And here he is saving Egypt right here, but they forget about him real quick. Maybe that's some advice to us. If we don't do something extraordinary then in our lifetime, then you know what? Nobody's going to remember you a
Do,
couple of
do
generations
you
from
want to
now.
know something, Ed? I have to tell you, I've actually thought that about myself and my mother. And I actually, I've thought about that because my grandchildren never met my mother. Okay. And so I've talked to them about it, but they never asked me any questions about my mother. And it's interesting. I think that my mother is kind of like a faint memory in their lives. And by the time they have children, my mother won't exist for them. So I've actually thought about that, how it is after several generations. I think that's the truth. I think that the only famous people like, presidents and people that have done great, scientific discoveries. Yeah, those are the people that are written up in books. But someone like myself, I don't think anybody would remember me several generations later unless
I'll
I do
remember
something.
you, Ruthie. I'll
No,
remember.
yeah, yeah, but
Well,
you
Dr.
remember me till you die.
What Dr. Ed is talking about is, I don't know if he means it in this context too, but it's the reason why the Jews became slaves, because collectively they didn't remember Joseph, and because they didn't, it said in the Torah portion that starts out, there was in Egypt a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. Why didn't he? Somehow, a lot of there are commentators that have said because over that period of time, they kind of, they didn't perpetuate the memory. They kind of, where he had been important in Egyptian society, the Jews, because they didn't remember their heritage, became less and less dominant, and to the point where they became slaves.
Interesting.
They didn't perpetuate the memory of what benefits the children of Israel or Joseph had done in Egypt, for Egypt.
And what has really moved me is why was Hitler allowed to kill all the Jews and to do a Holocaust? Because nobody remembered the Armenian Holocaust 100 years earlier.
I don't know.
If people had remembered the Armenian Holocaust, in which 1.5 million Armenians were killed, they had even thought about that, but they all forgot. They all
It
forgot.
wasn't even 100 years. That was like, wasn't the Armenian like around 1900,
Yeah,
1901?
maybe that's right. So,
It
see,
was,
Yeah, it was even closer than that.
it was 1915.
1950. So here we go. Here we go all over again.
So if you don't know your history, are you doomed to repeat something? Is that kind of
Yes.
the lesson here?
Yeah,
Of
that's
course, that's
just
Yes.
that's
exactly
it.
where I was
Yeah.
going to go, Mike Bodo.
That's exactly where
Yep.
we're going. Yeah.
But whose
Yep.
duty? Whose duty is to remember? Zachor in Hebrew. Remember? Well, I think the Jews are doing a good job. But the last of the Holocaust survivors are going to be gone in 10 years. All of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, but their children will remember them. Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
We have Holocaust memorials. They're lighting candles tonight at the Boston Holocaust Memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so is it our duty on this earth to do something so we will be remembered, if that is possible?
Yeah, at least to have one person remember us, I think is truly a blessing. Because I don't
I've
think
thought
people, I don't
about
think
that.
people,
I thought
yeah.
I should write a book.
I don't
Not
think we need
necessarily.
grand
No, I
thing.
really
I don't
did
think we need.
I
because
don't
I've
think-
had an interesting life, and I thought maybe it would be. But I do think about that I would be just like a no one to someone after I go. I mean, yeah, you would know me, but you guys will die off too.
I know, but you know what? Somebody will say this is how I feel it works, is that a baby is born, and then that
Yeah.
baby has traits of you and then people will remember like, oh yeah, this is just like Ruth, and this is just like, and I think that's how it also works. That
Yeah.
we all our families, our babies, the kids and the children and their babies. I feel like it becomes full circle, and in that, even I'm even thinking about my own grandparents, who I don't think about very often. Sometimes I do, and they were just delightful because they didn't have to discipline me or my brothers and sisters, but I do think of them and just the love that they gave on holidays. And
Yeah, but a
so
perfect example of this, Michael, is that my mother's mother and my father's father were dead before I was born, and there was very little they could tell me about them because they died quite young. Okay, for an adult. Okay, so by the time I was born, they were gone like over 30 years or something. So I've heard bits and pieces about them, but I know very little about them.
Can
And
I say
so,
something? Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Um, it is important, obviously, Zachor, to remember, but
mhm,
the thing that's most important, I think, is not so much that you yourself or remember just you personally, but to do something in your life that is bigger and larger than yourself. Something that, in other words, like we study the Torah. We, live and die like a flash. The Torah has been around for thousands of years and will continue to be probably, for human existence on earth or whatever. But it's what you do, like, in other words, say Martin Luther King, if we talk about him, yet we remember him, because of something major that he did,
yeah,
and it's so, in other words, it's the ideals. When you think of Martin Luther King, you think of equality, you think of equal rights for everybody.
yeah, but not
You
everybody's a
think of,
Martin Luther King. That's what I'm saying.
I know that, I know, but I'm saying that you should be, it's important to remember your relatives, but I'm saying to perpetuate certain things in society. Like in the case with Joseph, it's what Joseph kind of represented. It's like it's what he did for Egypt. Like,
Okay.
because he did something so important, that memory is really important. If I drop dead, it doesn't matter what people remember about me in a sense, unless I do something of critical importance to the world or something that's universal or so much larger than my own life and existence.
You played Led Zeppelin at a Christian church for worship.
That's true. That's true. That is a tough act
No
to
one else
follow.
has done that ever, as far as I know.
Yeah, and if they are,
Yeah.
do they get into heaven? Does God say, oh,
Oh my
I don't know
God.
if God's a Led Zeppelin fan, he'd like it. But, that's what I'm saying. It's like, in this case, like, I mean, it's important to be remembered in that sense. I'm talking in the larger sense, though. Like
Yeah,
Joseph's
right.
family can remember him, but it was important for the children of Israel collectively to
Right.
remember Joseph and to remain engaged in life in Egypt after Joseph's death. Apparently, they ceased to do that over time to the point where they were
They
made
became
slaves.
slaves. Yeah.
They went from up here to down here.
Yeah.
But
And somehow it's
but they did
because they
remember
forgot their
him.
history.
But they did remember him eventually because they carried the bones out of Egypt 200 or 400 years later, and they eventually remembered because we're
Well,
studying
it
today.
isn't just because they forgot who they were. It's also because the Pharaoh died and a new Pharaoh came. The previous Pharaoh liked the Jewish people. The new Pharaoh did not like them, and he
Right.
enslaved them.
That's right. And
but
then
that's the
they
whole
became like they
but
were
that's the
it was
whole issue.
competition, right? Competition.
Right.
But what was the period of time between the Pharaoh's death? It doesn't happen
Doesn't really
instantly.
say. Yeah, it doesn't really say.
It's over time. It deteriorates over time. And as we see, as Dr. Ed just pointed out, it doesn't take that long. The Armenian genocide, 1915, less than 30 years later, an even larger genocide,
Mhm, mhm.
you know?
You know, well, it's even my brother Philip, some of you know, sat on the bench, and last year he finished the final cases of the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields, and he had to do that with the United Nations because Cambodia wanted to squash that memory. So here we are dealing with the same thing as was going on in Egypt, is that Egypt squashed the memory of Joseph. They didn't want anyone to know about him because they got a bunch of slaves. And Cambodia, just last year, had been working for years to squash to the memory of the millions of people killed violently at the hands of the Khmer Rouge in the killing fields. So it's the same analogy here. It's the same analogy that we want to forget this stuff. We have to forget this stuff to go on in many people's minds. And guess what? To the detriment of the detriment of the Egyptians who their whole army died in the middle of the Red Sea ultimately, and the wandering of the Jews for 40 years in the desert. So what we're saying here is this happens every 40 years. Every 40 years. Do you realize that? Every 40 years. We humans are horrible people. Horrible.
Right from the get-go.
Huh. So
This is a
now
deep
that I had
conversation. I love it, though. I love
such an uplifting discussion on,
Your brother's doing God's
on
work
Hanukkah.
too. That's the thing. Yeah, Hanukkah.
Yeah.
What a uplifting, and what drives me crazy is all this new stuff on the Maccabees. Growing up, the Maccabees were the ultimate resistance fighters.
Yeah.
So, and now and guess what? Our own people wrote them out of the Torah. Why? Because they didn't like the rabbis. They hated rabbis, so they were written out of history. So we do it even to ourselves.
Wow.
Oh well,
Wow.
Jews do it to Jews today all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
that if Jews could get along with Jews, it would be a feat in itself. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Anyway, I have been quiet the last 2 weeks, and now you got me wound up again, Michael Bodo.
It's okay.
And Gary did
It's
it too.
all right.
It's not all
We
my
gotta have
fault.
all types of people here.
Michael Bodo, I've got dozens of phone calls today about Christmas.
All
So
right.
we got to talk.
Nice. I'm in too. Alba and I are going to be there, and I think Annie and Gary are going to be there.
Mhm.
I'm going to volunteer all my friends. All right, where are we? Totally forgot now.
Number,
Is it
number
like
39.
39? Do you want to continue?
Yes, I do.
All right, Monique, go.
Monique,
go.
Monique.
Pharaoh then said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my household, and all my people shall obey your word. Only I, the throne, shall be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, observe, I have placed you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and put it in Joseph's hand. He dressed him in linen trappings and placed a gold chain of office around his neck. He gave him his viceroy's chariot to ride. They cried out, royal steward, before him. He placed him in charge of all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh now said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you, none shall lift hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh called Joseph Zaphenath Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, as his wife. Thus Joseph came to be in charge of the land of Egypt. When Joseph began to serve Pharaoh, king of Egypt, he was 30 years old. Joseph left Pharaoh's presence and traversed the whole land of Egypt. In the 7 years of plenty, the land produced to overflowing. He gathered all the surplus food there was in the land of Egypt from the 7 years. He placed food in the cities. The food that came from the cities surrounding fields, he placed in its midst. Thus Joseph heaped up grain as plentiful as the sands of the sea until he left off measuring, for it was beyond measure. 2 sons were born to Joseph before the years of famine arrived, born to him by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all the troubles I endured in my father's house. And he named the second son Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began as Joseph had foretold. There was famine in all the lands, but all over the land of Egypt there was food. Yet all the land of Egypt was starving, so that the people cried out to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh said to all Egypt, go to Joseph, do whatever he tells you. The famine had spread across the land, so Joseph opened up all that was in the stores, and he provided for Egypt, for the famine had gained strength in the land of Egypt. And all lands came to Egypt to buy provisions from Joseph, for the famine had taken hold in every land. When Jacob realized there was grain for sale in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why are you staring at each other?" He said, "Look, I have heard there are provisions for sale in Egypt. Go down that way and buy us provisions from there, that we may live and not die." So Joseph's brothers went down, the 10 of them, to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's full brother, with his brothers, for he thought, lest a deadly mishap befall him. Israel's sons came to buy provisions in the midst of those who came, for the famine prevailed over the whole land of Canaan.
But you see what's happening? Can I just interrupt for 1 second? I always laugh. I laugh out loud all the time I read that line that Jacob says to his sons. What? Why are you staring at each other? There's a famine. Stop looking at each other. Do something. It's like the Three Stooges. They're all like looking.
But
at
it's
each other.
also representative of the fact that, like, when you witness something terrible happen, some horrific event or something, like you witness somebody attacking somebody, and nobody calls 911. Everybody's standing around waiting for somebody else to do it. And that's what it sounds like. It's in that context here. Like, like nobody's, well, I thought he was going to do it. Like, or maybe he's going to, like, why do you,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think of that a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. And then the other thing is, see how this is all playing out? Like everyone's going down to Egypt. Like Joseph, not only is Joseph saving Egypt from this calamity, but everybody around, even Israel, even the Hebrews, that low small band of people who are up in Canaan. And that to me is such a huge symbolic thing for the world to see, like one person. And also, we never really get the story of like how did Joseph was accused of trying to sleep with the Potiphar's wife, and how did that play out? Like, how did no one say, well, isn't this guy the guy that did this? Or maybe just they thought he had done his time. Or somebody else told me, I think it was Shalom, who said that the wife had actually been caught doing the same thing to another man or something like this. But we don't know. But anyway, Joseph, I love that he names his first son Manasseh, so that God made me forget all the troubles I endured in my father's house. I just there's so much richness here. It's just beautiful, and I just love it. I just love this story.
That's my father's Hebrew name, Manasseh.
Manasseh. Ah, sweet,
Yeah.
sweet. All right, where were we? Anything?
Okay, Israel's sons came to buy provisions in the midst of those who came, for the famine prevailed over the whole land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the one who had sway over the land. He was the one selling provisions to all the people of the
Bring it up.
land. Joseph's brothers therefore came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. He said to them, "Where have you come from?" They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Joseph then remembered the dreams he had dreamt about them, and then he said to them, "You are spies who have come to see the land's nakedness." "No, my lord," they said to him, "your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of the same man. We are honest. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, indeed, it is the land's nakedness that you have come to see." They then said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, sons of a man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is with our father right now, and one is no more." Then Joseph said to them, "It is I have said to you, you are spies. This is how you shall be put to the test. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not get out of this unless your youngest brother comes here. Send forth one of you and let him fetch your brother while the rest of you are confined. Thus your words will be put to the test to see whether you are being truthful. If not, as Pharaoh lives, you are indeed spies." And he placed them under guard for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and live. I am a God-fearing man. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your place of custody, while the rest of you go bring provisions to relieve the starvation of your families. Then bring your youngest brother to me, and let your words be proven trustworthy, so that you do not die. They went to do this. The brothers said to one another, oh, we are being punished on account of our brother. We saw his soul's distress when he pleaded with us, but we didn't listen. On that account, this distress has come upon us. Reuben now responded to them and saying, didn't I say to you, do not sin against the lad? But you wouldn't listen, and so his blood payment, see, it has come due. I'm going to stop.
Okay, I'll continue.
Can we talk about this though? This is
Oh,
so
yeah, sure.
incredible. This is like karma, right? They're talking about karma here in,
Yeah.
in the Torah. This is like, oh my gosh, this is what happened. This is how it's going on. Isn't that amazing? I don't think we ever really talk about karma.
And there are some, I think, commentators that have said that, when you said, why were the brothers standing around looking at each other? Some of the commentators say that they were afraid of the possibility of going into Egypt because they remembered that they had, so it kind of implies that they've had it hanging over them, and now they're here and they still don't recognize, but they're, you know what I mean?
Right.
They've had that fear of all this time.
I'm sorry. I'm
Well,
talking.
go ahead.
they sold him to a caravan going into Egypt.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I feel like if we can go back to the Esau Jacob idea, it feels like all these brothers are Esau. It feels like all these guys are like, we're gonna just work with our hands and figure it out. I'm not gonna think about too much of the consequences. Now the consequences are right back in their face. And then you have Jacob, the real Jacob, their dad, who is nervous as all hell because he doesn't want Benjamin, his only other son from Rachel, his true love, can I say that? I don't know. But it's just the emotion here is just so startling to me. It's just like, how did this modern fairy tale novel get inside a book that's thousands of years old? It's so incredible. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
But you know what's interesting though? The brothers, you say like Esau, but in this case, they're the ones that deceived their father into thinking his Joseph was dead. How low can you go,
Yeah.
You
And there you go. Karma, is that karma again? Playing
Yeah.
out for Jacob. I don't know. You want to keep
Yeah,
this
I'll continue.
play
I'll
going?
continue. I'll go on. They did not know that Joseph understood, for the interpreter had been between them. He left them and wept. Then he came back to them, spoke to them, took Simeon from them, and bound him before their eyes. Joseph gave the command. They were to fill their bags with grain, and his men were to return each one silver to his sack and give them provisions for the road. Thus he did to them. They loaded their provisions on their asses and went away. When at the night lodging, one of them opened his sack to give fodder to his ass, he saw his silver. It was in the mouth of his bag. When he said to his brothers, my silver has been returned. Look, it's in my bag. Their hearts gave out, and trembling they turned to each other and said, what is that? What is this that God has done to us? They then came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had befallen them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us. He treated us as though we were spying out the land. We said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of the same father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father right now in the land of Canaan. That man, the Lord of the land, said to us, this is how I will know that you are honest. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take relief for the starvation of your families and go. And bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will indeed know that you are not spies, that you are honest. I will give you back your brother, and you can pass through the land. When they emptied their sacks, each one's money bag was in his sack. And when they caught sight of their money bags, they and their father, they were struck with fear. Their father Jacob said to them, you have left me bereft. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin from me? All these things have come down on me. Reuben then said to his father, put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Give him unto my hands, and I will return him to you. But Jacob said, my son shall not go down with you. His brother is dead and he alone remains. If a disaster should befall him on the way, then you will be going. You would cause my gray head to go down in anguish to Sheol. The famine bore heavily on the land, and when they had consumed the provisions they brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a bit of food." But Judah said to him, "The man adjured us most definitely, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' If you're willing to let our brother go with us, we'll go down and buy food for you. But if you're not willing to let him go, we will not go down." The man said to us, "You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you." Israel then said, "Why did you do me this wrong?" Answering the man's question. The man's question. "Have you yet another brother?" They answered, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Do you have a brother?' So we answered as required by these questions. How on earth could we have known that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Judah then said to his father Israel, "Let the lad go with me, and let us get up and be on our way, that we may live and not die, we ourselves and you, and our little ones as well. I will be responsible for him. From my hand you may demand him, and if I do not bring him back to you and plant him in front of you, I shall stand condemned before you for all time." If we hadn't dallied, we could have returned twice by now. Their father Israel then said to them, "If that's the way it must be, do this. Take from among the land's choice products in your bags and bring the man an offering, a bit of balm, a bit of honey, some laudanum, mastic, pistachios, I love pistachios, and almonds, and take double the silver with you, and hand over the silver that was returned in your bags. It may have been a mistake. Yes, take your brother, get going, and go back to the man. May El Shaddai give you mercy before that man, so that he lets you and your other brother and Benjamin go. And as for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." The men then took this offering, and taking in hand the double portion of silver along with Benjamin, they got going and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the one in charge of his household, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and prepare, for men are going to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said. The man brought the man into Joseph's house. The men were frightened. When they were brought into Joseph's house, they thought, "It is on account of the silver that came back in our bags the first time that we're being brought here in order to fall upon us, to pounce on us, to take us slaves along with our asses." They therefore approached the man in charge of Joseph's household and spoke to him at the entrance of the house, saying, "By your leave, my lord, the last time we came down to buy food, when we got to the night lodging and opened our bags, each one's silver was in the mouth of his bag, the exact amount that had been weighed out, and we have brought it back with us. And we have brought other money to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our bags." He replied, "You're all right. Have no fear. Your God and your father's God has given you a hidden treasure in your bags. Your money reached me," and he brought Simeon out to them. The man then ushered the men into Joseph's house. He supplied water, and they washed their feet and gave fodder to their asses. They laid out the offering for the arrival of Joseph at noon, for they had heard that they would eat food there. When Joseph entered the house, they presented to him the offering they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and he said, "How is your aged father of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they knelt and bowed down. He looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and he said, "Is this your younger brother you told me about?" And he added, "God be gracious to you, my son." Joseph hurried out, for he was so deeply stirred with tender warmth toward his brother that he wanted to weep. He went into an inner chamber, and there he wept. He washed his face, and when he came out, he held himself in check and said, "Serve food." They served him separately, and the Egyptians who usually ate with him separately, for the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, since it was an abomination to the Egyptians. As they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his seniority, and the youngest according to his youth, the men looked at each other in amazement. He presented portions of food to them from what in front of them. Benjamin's portion exceeded all of their fivefold, and they drank and grew drunk with him. Afterward, he commanded the one in charge of his household, saying, "Fill the man's bags with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his bag, and put my goblet, the silver goblet, in the mouth of the youngest one's bag, along with the silver for this grain." He did just as Joseph instructed. At morning light, the men were sent off, they and their asses. They had left the city, but had not gone far, when Joseph said to one in charge of his household, "Get going, pursue the men when you overtake them. Say to them, 'Why did you repay good with evil? This is what my master drinks from, and with which he constantly practices divination. Have you not caused harm by what you have done?" He overtook them and spoke all these words to them. And they said to him, "Why is my Lord speaking such words? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Look, we brought you back the silver that we found in the mouth of our bags, all the way from the land of Canaan. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? Let anyone caught with it among your servants die, and for our part will become my Lord's slaves." He replied, "Yes, right away, just as you say, so shall it be. But while he who is caught with it shall be my slave, the rest of you shall be cleared." They hastened to lower their bags to the ground, and each opened his bag. He began searching with the eldest and ended with the youngest until he found the goblet in Benjamin's bag. They tore the mantles, each then reloaded his ass, and they went back to the city. Judah and his brothers entered Joseph's house. He was still there. They fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this deed that you have done? Did you know that a man like me constantly practiced divination?" Judah replied, "What can we say to my Lord? How speak, and how justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants here. We are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one who was caught with the goblet in his possession." But he said, "Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the goblet was found, he shall be my slave. And the rest of you go up in peace to your father."
I think that's it, right? Woo!
Yep.
Cliffhanger.
Oh my,
Cliffhanger.
it was a cliffhanger, because so far Joseph isn't revealing himself yet to them.
Oh.
No.
And he's so cool. I mean, here's a famine. There's a famine going on in the land.
What is
Joseph-
Can I ask you, what is the practice of divination?
Oh, that's looking into the future.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't know what that
Yeah.
meant.
Yeah, and
Thank
that's
you.
supposedly one of the things that Joseph doesn't do quite right.
Okay.
supposedly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was good. Thank you.
It's kind of frowned upon, isn't it? Like from
Yes, it is. It's frowned upon.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But notice a couple of things here. When the brothers come back for the second visit with Benjamin, Joseph it's the interesting thing to me is that Joseph doesn't scold them or anything. He doesn't say, "What took you so long?" They were up there until they ran out of food again, and then they had to go back. And Shimon, what's the one that was stayed there?
Simeon.
Simeon was down there for months or something, right? But
Right.
it's so amazing to me. The story is absolutely incredible. Like, but then he sets it up so Benjamin has to be his slave now, and so it's everyone's worst fears come true. Yet, we know that this is all just for the huge reveal in the end, which is going to be next week's, there must be next week's, and then
Yeah.
and then
So we have to wait until next week. It's like, the soap opera till next week.
It's so amazing. It's such a great story. I just
In the end, Jacob goes back with them,
that's right. Yeah.
That's true.
and that's when Joseph reveals himself when he sees his father.
Right. That's right.
That's incredible. But you notice, like Joseph, the first question he asks is, "Your father's still alive?" Because they were gone so long. Anything could have happened, right? It's
Yeah,
like, is
that's
your
right.
father still
Right.
alive? You guys
Right.
spent so long coming back. I hope to God your father's still alive.
And that doesn't make them think, well, what do you care about our father?
I
Father.
know.
Yeah, me.
Yeah,
I thought the
exactly.
same thing, Ed. Right.
You know, what do you care about him? What the hell? You know, we're just happy you haven't robbed us and killed us. And
Right. Just
you
give
know,
us
what,
food.
what's going on here? How come? I mean, doesn't it catch you by? They're
Yeah.
so stupid, or they have forgotten about him. Here it is all over again. He's gone. They think, they had a part in killing him, and they just keep going on as if nothing happened. But you know what? It is what it is. The man. You know what the Afghans say, and this is a something that we talk about in business. The man who waits 100 years to get his revenge is a very impatient man. Now that is an Afghan proverb that we use in
Interesting.
that we've used in business all the time. And I've taught that, wait. What goes around comes around, and guess what? They're ultimately going to get it all. And they ultimately don't get it all because he forgives them.
Right. That is it. The whole story is a waiting game. The whole thing. Joseph gets thrown into prison. He has to wait. The
Yeah.
brothers go down.
Yeah.
They come back. They have to wait. Everyone is. It's like it's a slow progress. And as you know, Ruthie was saying, that he grows up. Joseph grows up in the process. He grows
Yeah.
up
That
through that
I do
patience.
believe it's all about, maturing
Even
and yeah.
well, we know that he's like about 13 years old. Like when we first hear that he's 17, now he's 30.
Yeah.
When he gets into the position he's in. And when the brothers come down and he recognizes them, he doesn't say, "Ha ha, you threw me into the pit, you
Right, right.
SOBs. Now
But
you're
but
here
that's the
begging."
whole but that's the whole issue. That's the whole
Right.
issue that I don't get. I mean, he says, doesn't make a big deal about forgiving them. I mean, he has no revenge here, which is kind of a
Well,
it's
don't you think he's matured? That's the only way I can
And
look
that's
at it.
why he's looked at in the Bible as a tzaddik. He had the ability to resist sexual advances. He had the ability to understand that the dreams, as is interpreted, came from God. He had the ability to see that it was all part of God's plan, what his brothers did to him. So he didn't
Yeah.
see it as their fault. He just saw it as God's will.
I'm
Yeah.
not a tzaddik. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, don't underrate yourself,
Don't
Dr. Ed.
underestimate yourself. You're a tzaddik and things about blood.
You are a tzaddik.
Oh, yeah, bloodlust.
What is the definition of a tzaddik?
A good
Someone
person.
who's
A righteous,
yeah,
good person.
a
A right-
righteous
a
Tzaddik.
person.
righteous person?
A righteous
Was
person.
a Ru'alat Tzaddik. Light shines for the righteous.
Yeah.
Is it like a holy person too? Can they have like a spiritual side? Is that part of
It
it?
just means that you're a good, decent person, a righteous.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing to me about this story is just the way Joseph's in the middle of this huge famine, and he's got all this responsibility now. He has to make sure that everyone's fed and that people aren't going to overthrow Pharaoh. Really, I mean that's pretty much his full job. I mean, this Pharaoh says, "You know what's going to happen. Figure it out so that what? So that I can still be in charge." Right? He doesn't really say that, but it's like if you don't figure it out, it's my neck essentially. And so
Right.
Joseph starts right away because of his brilliant management skills, which he seems to have always kind of had. And I think Ruthie's right. When he was in prison, they put him in charge of things, And
Yeah.
so once, right when he
I
got
think,
out of
I
prison-
really believe it was all maturity. I really think about, who I was at 17 or so and who I was at 30 was a whole, I was really I was crazy.
Can I say something real quick too?
Yeah.
Just ties in
I
with
wish
what
I
you just
knew
said,
you
Mike.
then, Ruthie. I wish I knew you
This
then.
is
man.
maybe that's why when you talk about him always seeming to have that management ability, maybe that's why his dad used to send him out to see how the brothers were doing with the flocks.
Yeah.
Why,
Right,
you say why did he send out this young kid? Because maybe, and like you say, Mike, like they were more like Esau, and Joseph is kind of like Jacob. He's more of a
right.
thinker. He was able to go out there and report back, and
Exactly. I think
maybe the reports that he gave, maybe they were bad reports, but maybe they were honest and accurate.
right. Exactly. He didn't like try to hide the truth. He just gave it like he saw it, and that's,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And we make the assumption that he was kind of being a jerk and going back and saying, "Oh, Dad, they're terrible. Oh, they're," but maybe he was honestly, giving him a report that they just weren't.
I would have felt much better about this Pasha as if he threw them all into jail for a couple of years. I would have felt a lot better.
That sounds awful.
Nah, I like it though.
Revenge.
Forgive them
No,
after they pay their
you
price.
know, maybe it would have given direction to the Jewish people not to turn the other cheek and not to get into, it's it is what it is. I that maybe it would have been a better story if he had thrown him into jail, or at least he killed a couple of them.
But that would have been the most obvious thing. But I think this is why we have the story, because it isn't obvious, that he did something that made him a tzaddik. It made him a righteous person.
Hey, listen,
Exactly.
I'll tell you, after reading this, I don't want to be a tzaddik.
You don't have to be.
I don't want to be. I mean,
Too late, Dr. Ed.
it is what it is.
All right, whatever.
No, I think your point's well, but I think they learned more of a lesson trembling in fear when they had to talk to their dad about, like, he wants Benjamin, he wants your favorite other son that we're not a part of, and the fear of, like, first they have all this guilt on them, it's like
Jewish guilt. It's been around for centuries.
Well,
got rid of Joseph. They totally got rid of him, and now they're gonna have to. Are they gonna be able to live with themselves if Benjamin doesn't come back to their dad? Right now, in this part of the story, they don't know what's gonna happen next. They think that Benjamin is pretty much toast, and this is like two things. The first one they definitely caused. The second one was not caused by them, but now they're going to have to go back to Canaan and tell this to Jacob, their dad, and it's going to be a disaster. They might as well know that they just put their head on the chopping block now, because Dad is going to slaughter us right then and there.
But I think indirectly, to an extent, Dr. Ed, too, to an extent, I think that is kind of part of the punishment for a little bit, that he even demands that Benjamin come down. And he knows, like you could say, he indirectly, but it is because of what they did, because Joseph is doing this because he knows what they did. So he figures, like, they got rid of me, and now I'm going to ask them to send, because I know that my dad, besides me, that he loves Benjamin more than them. So I'm not going to ask for, like, one of them to, like, I want them to bring him down.
I'm
And that
just
in
curious.
itself-
When Joseph left, Benjamin wasn't born yet, right?
Oh no, he was, because Rachel had died.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was thinking
She
that.
died giving birth to Benjamin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if Benjamin was not around when Joseph left, but I was wrong. Okay, no.
Yeah, because
Okay.
Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin.
Okay, that's right. Okay, yeah. All right, you got a good
I mean, he
memory.
holds Shimon there.
My memory's going very quickly
He
here.
holds Shimon there just like as an insurance policy that they'll
Yeah.
hopefully bring Benjamin back.
Yeah, right.
They don't
right.
even talk
But
about Shimon. They don't even talk about Shimon when they go back to Canaan. That's the most amazing thing. There's not one word about Shimon still
Just
being
that they
I know.
leave him there. Just that they leave him
Wait,
there.
wait, this is the group that throws him in the pit, grabs the guy's coat, throws the blood on it, and comes back and say, "Hey, an animal got him." I
Imagine having brothers like that. I mean, I know your brothers, Dr. Ed. They're great, just like you. They're great guys, all three of you. Could you imagine having brothers like these guys?
Yeah, these guys are horrible. These guys are horrible. But but if someone did that,
but
if someone did that to my brothers,
don't you ever think that people can change their ways as they get older and
Yeah.
wiser?
Yeah.
the word is recidivism. That's recidivism. That is our job in life is to prevent recidivism.
Going
Right.
back.
I think it's in next week's portion that we do
Right.
see a major growth of, not to get too far ahead, but Judah.
Mhm.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah. Judah
All right, well,
really.
I'm looking forward to next week.
Yes.
And
So-
and Rudy's looking for his dreidel, so I have to help him with this.
Rudy is a Torah study.
Well, is that your church?
yeah, that's Tabernacle Church in Salem.
That's your church.
Yeah, that's our church. We're a different group. I mean, actually, it's such a funny group. It's like it's a real old church. I mean, they date back to like when the first Puritans came from England in 1600s. But of course, there was all these splitting and breakups, and so they're what they're called is the United Church of Christ, which is a mainline church, but they're so open to so many different ideas that I tend to bring up a lot. Like let's have a rock band, and they're like, okay, but it's never real easy to do these things because there was never. I mean, it wasn't. It was kind of tricky at first because it was people like, what are they? Oh, remember Gary? They'd always be like, turn down. Oh my gosh! And now they don't.
Oh, I know.
Gary's now like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, we brought out the big amp again that we hadn't been using, and you got all that sustain going for the solos and stuff. Nobody said anything about our volume.
I know, not this time. This is like our new season. No one has touched us.
When are you performing again?
January. So during the Christmas season, we'll take a break because that's actually our church gets a little pious and they get into Christmas. And the weeks leading up to Christmas are they're called Advent in the Christian calendar. So that we tend to kind of focus on waiting for Christ to be born. And it's to me it's all the same religion. It's just different.
But we accomplished, I mean, through the band, like talking about bringing people into Tab or whatever, but we always get more attendance in person and on Zoom when we play, is when we get the biggest crowds usually.
Good night, Ruth.
That's cool.
Good night, Ruthie.
Yeah.
Nice to
Good
see you.
night, everybody.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Maybe you should come in person next time, Monique. It'll be in January. Oh,
Okay, maybe I will.
That would be fun because, Gary, I'm thinking we should do like the theme. I was just thinking this. I was talking about dreams, but I think we should do like longing, like darkness and longing, because then we could do Sound of Silence. Hello, darkness, my old friend. We could do. We could do Yesterday. We could do.
Beware of Darkness.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
We're talking about the 20th today, the 20th anniversary of the passing of George Harrison.
Yeah.
My brother. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Ferry crossed the Mersey.
The what?
Oh, Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Gee.
So ferry cross the Mersey, 'cause this is the land I love, and here I'll stay. He just died, about a year ago?
Did he?
Jerry
he was
Marsden.
really- yeah.
And who was Jerry and the Pacemakers manager? Brian Epstein.
Was he?
Really? Yeah.
He managed the Beatles. He managed them, the Big Three, if you remember the Big Three. Shalom, I think, knew a member of the Big Three.
Really?
I think he knew their drummer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Oh, anyway, so Monique, you got to understand that this band came out of, we did this thing called the Multi Faith Festival, and we would somehow, we each church or synagogue would go up and do some songs and stuff. It turned out like Gary was playing along with all the different churches, and so Annie, before Annie and Gary were going out, Annie said, "You guys have got to start a band because Gary's playing along with all the different churches." So that's sort of how it started. I mean, and then
And Shalom is in your band?
yeah, Shalom and Steve Spector used to be in our band from Temple Tiferet Shalom, and so many. It was.
But otherwise, we're the same except for Rob, and we have a new, different drummer.
Yeah, and then we had another. We had. It's like anybody can join the band. We say it all the time. Anyone can show up and rehearse with us, and I mean they just have to put up with us. You know, our little quirks. Me, Gary, Shalom.
Yeah, but we're not too bad.
We're not so bad.
No, we always get it together. We always get it together. You know.
Yeah, I'm glad
It
you
is
liked
what
it.
we do.
That's
Oh, I thought it was terrific.
Thanks. Thank
Tell
you.
me again the name of the church
It's called Tabernacle Church
in Salem.
in Salem. Yeah, it's right by. It's where the train station is. It's
Yeah.
the first church if you come off the train station and go into town. It's the first church on the right. It has these big white columns, and I started going there about 2012. So it's almost 10 years ago.
Annie's been there since the '90s. Like,
Yeah,
she's been there since she was married to her husband,
really.
way back when Stephen was a kid.
Oh yeah, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen was at that church when he was a kid, and my daughter.
Yeah,
just-
there's actually, you see in the Bigelow room
yeah.
on that big quilt, there's one of the patches that says Stephen, Ann, and Stephen Bogan.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah, if you go look in the Bigelow room sometime when you're there.
That's incredible.
I freak out in that room because it makes me think of the night before I couldn't breathe, when I was having the breathing trouble. I always look at that table and that chair where where I was sitting. We were sitting at that table. Oh, I thought I was going to die.
That's incredible.
Well, good night, everybody. I've got to go, but
Good
thanks.
night, Dr. Ed.
You take care.
Have a good one. Happy Hanukkah.
Yes.
Happy
Thank you very
Hanukkah.
much.
Achi, if you want to stay on and chat about Get
Oh
Back
my
for a
gosh, we'll
bit.
be here all night. This is great. Yeah.
I know.
I'll definitely chat.
I know. I was telling Annie that. I said that Mike and I have to discuss it, but it's going to take like as long as the film is for us to discuss it because it's not a quick thing, but
It's so much there. That's why I texted you the other night to say, "Are you up for a discussion on this?" Because I just was talking
yeah.
to my brother about it. My brother hadn't seen it, and I kept on saying, "Tell me if you don't want to hear what I'm going to tell you," because there's so many
Oh.
things in this movie. It's
Good night,
there is
guys.
some
Bye,
Good
Monique.
night,
Good
Monique.
night. Bye-bye. See you next week. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Talk to me.
There was one. I love the scene where I like when they show them reading stuff about themselves
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
that's
news
great.
and stuff. I love when John is like, Beatle George Harrison is facing assault charges today. Harrison, who is leaving the club with fellow Beatle Ringo Starr, and they all stop playing and jamming. But then there's the other one where John, Ringo, and George are like horsing around and they're playing some music and stuff. And while they're doing that, Paul has his Hofner, but he's just reading the story. The Beatles are a lot of friction between the Beatles. And then, he reads the whole story.
whole story.
Never again would it ever be. I don't include Ringo in this because he never bought into the fanaticism that the others have. And it has gotten to the point where each one has to be embarrassed covering up for the antics of the others. Paul's just reading the whole story like.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible.
And then when they were talking about after, and George was saying with that story, he goes, it's incredible because, it's really like, you have nothing to do with it, They write these stories like that,
Yeah, just fiction. It's just like a fiction.
Like Bob Dylan used to say, that's why it's a waste of time to do interviews. He goes, you ask me questions, I answer them, and then you publish something different than what I said. So why should I even bother? It's a waste of time,
Like, did they even understand the answer to the question? I mean, that's the thing.
But the thing for me that really, really drives it home, though, is how they sounded on the roof. They started out with shit. And then within 4 weeks, they were up there playing these songs that they had just finished, and they sounded so good. And what else? Billy Preston.
Oh, I had
Billy Preston.
tears in my eyes. I couldn't believe
Oh,
just
Billy
that the
Preston.
beauty.
Billy Preston is, and you see the way they treated, like he was a Beatle for that session.
Oh yeah,
When they told
loved
them,
him.
they
They
said,
respected him so much. They'd been
remember
through
John told him,
together.
and when John said, if you stay and you play with us, he says, we're doing the film, we're doing an album, so you'll be on it. He's like,
I know
what,
John essentially said, "Oh, that's our fifth Beatle. That's the
And
fifth
he is the only other musician that contributed to a Beatles recording whose name is listed when Get Back came out, the single, and I still have it. It was on Apple label, and at the bottom of the label, it says the Beatles, and then underneath it says featuring Billy Preston.
Wow, that's
Is
incredible.
the only yeah, and you remember when they first brought that keyboard in, and I don't remember which Beatles were there, John and a few of them maybe. And they were saying, oh, look at a new toy, like a new, it was kind of new at that time. And then they were saying something about, but we really we really need, I think it was John might have said, we really need somebody else in the band, like another
Yeah,
band member, like to play.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Billy just came in and he was the fucking,
I know, just what they needed. Absolutely what
he
they.
was so fucking great, that guy.
It was
Oh,
like it was almost like a church service too. Like some of that stuff, like the
yeah.
Let It Be,
His,
some other stuff, just
he
that
gave it.
stuff. Yeah, it was like
His
amazing.
keyboards like gave it that gospel,
Yeah,
but he also did that great solo in Get Back,
oh, that was a
you
phenomenal.
know?
I know, and you could barely see him on the camera in the on the roof. It's like you could just see
Oh,
his
but you
face
hear him
back
though.
there. Oh yeah, exactly.
You hear him. Yep.
I was so, the thing is about the whole, I have this thing about the Paul McCartney arc, the arc of Paul McCartney, because I feel like he totally, at first, the first 2 hours, I really thought this guy's a jerk. Like I would not want to be in a band with him because
Right, right.
he's telling Ringo to play one way and they were only working on the middle eighth to the don't let me down, and they're spending
Yep.
hours and hours just on a middle eighth, and he's telling
Yep.
Ringo to do it. Oh, do it up here, and then 5 minutes later, oh, do it on the toms like this down here. I was
And then
like,
he's giving George
oh
he's giving
yeah,
George, that's part of what pissed George off too.
right,
Plus George didn't want to do the TV show.
right, oh yeah, yeah, and Ringo wasn't thrilled with it either, and
No.
but the thing about
Ringo wanted it when they talked about going on the roof though. At first Paul said he didn't want to go up, but Ringo right away is like, I want to go on the roof. John's like, I'll go up there.
they're like kids. They still had like that 15 or 16-year-old sensibilities sometimes. They're
But
so.
I'm saying that when you see this movie, do you see four guys who look like they were on the verge of going their separate ways? They're still doing it.
Well, I think
They
yeah.
have-
Well, that's true. That's true too. But it's sort of inevitable in a certain
I
way.
know. I know.
But but yeah,
When
yeah.
you hear,
It's hard to imagine that they don't come back.
do you
Like
remember when
when George talks
George
about like he talks about doesn't George talk about doing a solo record and coming back?
exactly? He's
Yeah,
telling
and
John,
that feels more like
he's like, I
re.
got all these. He goes, I got all these songs. Like, he's like, and I want to just kind of get them out of the way. He
Wow.
says, and he goes,
I
I could
missed
give
that
him.
part a little bit. Yeah.
He says I could give it. He's telling John this. He goes, I could give them to other people, but he goes, I was thinking like, if I just recorded them myself, he goes, and then I get that out of the way, like, so it kind of helps the Beatles more because then I
Yeah.
could, once I get those out of the way, I could focus more
I know.
on. But I like when they were talking about Billy joining, then they were talking about getting Eric Clapton and other people,
Right.
and John's like, oh, we could be Beatles and company.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Like yeah, exactly like kind of what we're doing, kind of like whoever wants to play, come on down. And but I
But
mean,
we're really the band. Like, I mean, other people that join us, like they're with us, but they're not.
yeah, I know.
Like you and Shalom and myself and George
I know.
and Rob. Like we're the
And Annie.
the
And
and
Annie.
Annie especially
Oh my
more.
God.
I mean Annie because yeah
Even if she
and
doesn't
I
sing.
always tell Annie always thinks that I'm being you know what's the word? because I'm in love because I love her so much that when I wanted to sing, but I honestly tell her, I said, you carry a tune better than most people, and you have a very sweet sounding voice.
She does. She
I
absolutely
said,
does.
it's just your natural voice. I said, it's not that like other people that sing with us, like if Betsy or anybody, it's not that they can't carry a tune either. But you have a very sweet voice. I said, that's something that you either have or you don't have, what God gives you. There are
Right.
some people that have great voices that you have to be a singer because you have a great voice. It's like if you're 7 feet tall, you got to play basketball. If you have a great voice, you got to sing.
That's
And
right.
Annie has a really good voice, so when she sings, it's very sweet, you know?
Exactly. It is sweet. It's absolutely sweet.
Yeah. But
And
she thinks that you and I like try to push her, like, because but I tell her it's not because, you
even like
know,
when we did the July 4th thing in 28, when was it? 2019.
yep.
It like it makes everything sound better. Shalom always sounds better with one other person singing along with him. It's like he's
And
an
Annie
excellent
is the
singer.
Annie's the best to have, and she sounded good on July 4th on the recording you
Yeah.
could hear her.
And that's the beauty of Shalom too, is that he keeps people in tune. So he's like a guiding vocal, because you can hear him. Everyone can hear him,
Annie's
and
voice
he'll
is like, right, and Annie's voice is like so feminine, like it's so girlish,
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
like a
Feminine,
sweet little girl, you know?
sweet. So
We
back
had
to
a
the
good,
movie. But the
yeah.
movie it's remarkable. I felt like it gave me such closure on that period because I felt like, you know what? They worked their asses off. They literally, I had no idea they rehearsed like 90% of the Abbey Road record through that whole session. And and on top of that, they played like over 100 songs, maybe
Oh
close to
my God, they
150.
played. Remember when John started singing, "You are my sunshine, my," and then Ringo starts playing, "You make me happy when I feel."
I know, and
It
they
was
give credit
great.
like every song that they sing, they put up on the screen like this
Yep,
the songwriter. Here it is, and
it was
it's like
great.
so many they work their butts off. They're
Yeah,
completely going crazy with it, but it
and they,
really I mean I feel like you could kind of see that it really was the business side of things. The business side of things killed the band because they couldn't get their shit together. I don't know how the Rolling Stones survived or
well,
what.
that's because Brian died. When
Right,
Brian was alive, he was running it. They weren't businessmen. They didn't know anything about
right,
that guy Alex, Magic Alex, if you know
right.
about the history of him, right? If you ever read about him, I mean, the guy was kind of like a crackpot, but somehow when he met John, John was taken by him, and John introduced him to George. And you see, he was supposed to build all the recording equipment at their new Apple studio, and when they got in there, what happened? The equipment sucked.
Yeah,
Remember, they
yeah.
said George Martin called EMI. They had to have recording equipment brought over,
It's
and they
yeah,
lost a lot of money because of him too. He bled a lot of money out of Apple.
yeah. It's
But the
such a
other
tough thing.
side,
Yeah.
no, I was gonna say, but you also get to see like the most successful band in history and the greatest songwriting team, and you get to just watch them at
Hmm.
work.
You're right.
You
Oh,
get to
exactly. Just sit
watch.
there. Yeah, sit there. Exactly.
It makes the Let It Be album. I mean, one of your favorite. Every time you listen to it now, because you're seeing some of the record, I mean, the actual footage in the studio when they were it'll say like this take was included on the Let It Be album,
Right. Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, and I always loved the Rooftop. I didn't
Yeah.
always like the Let It Be album. When the Let It Be Naked album came out, where they took off all that extra shit,
Oh, from Phil Spector. Yeah.
yeah. But what is weird though, too, one of the big beefs supposedly that McCartney had when that came out is he hated what Phil Spector did to the Long and Winding Road,
Right. Really
all the
over.
orchestration. But yet, if you heard in this thing, when he plays it, he was talking about strings or something, and
Right.
George says something about, he goes, "You're going to put strings on it?" And Paul's like, "Possibly."
Right.
So
Yeah.
he
It was
was
an
he was
option.
considering it, you
Sure.
know?
Maybe not that way that Spector did it, but yeah,
Right.
exactly. He didn't rule anything out, and I love the fact that McCartney back in that time was saying that Yoko wasn't a problem. Just not just.
None of them did. Remember, he was saying that he says, he goes, they want to be together all the time. He goes, and I understand that,
Yeah, he understood. He understood the pain of John Lennon. He like that's his
Yeah,
brother.
and
Like he's
he
like,
said like if we push him to the point where he has to choose between Yoko or the Beatles, he's obviously going to choose Yoko.
yeah,
He's like, and that makes sense. And they all seem to be friendly with her.
exactly. Just
Remember
thinking
when
of the
she was
pain.
asking? Remember when Yoko was asking George Martin about music scores, where she could get sheet music?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Remember that? And
That's
then
incredible.
and then there's one scene where she's sitting there reading a book. It's some kind of compilation of Beatles, I don't know, songs or something. But she's sitting there reading this book.
Is she? Is she?
Yeah.
Now, I understood that she's a pianist. Like she's an accomplished pianist. Like she can do
She
like
played on I think she played on the song Love at the beginning. The piano
oh
one.
yeah,
I think
that's
she
true.
played that.
And
I
what
think
I
she
heard
played.
too was that she was playing some Bach thing at home in front of John, and he said, "Can you do that backwards or do it differently?" And then that became like the background for because that whole
Wow.
yeah. I just recently heard
Wow.
that. Yeah, that it was some Bach thing that
Wow.
he turned inside out, but she was playing it. You know, what I mean, so she really did become part of his creative genius. Like he
Oh
did
God,
kind of
yeah.
move right from McCartney to
They
Yoko.
treated her like shit, but she really was no slouch, though.
Yeah, even though
Yoko's
she's
a
kind of crazy
major.
when she gets on the mic.
Yeah. Oh, I love when they did that with John and Paul and her,
Yeah, that was nuts.
and
That was
and
absolutely nuts.
that
When
was
George
great.
left and they just let it all out. Like John was pissed. He's like, "I'm so pissed.
Paul,
I'm so freaking pissed."
but John said he wanted to put that on the album or something.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
The
That's like
screaming.
right, like number 9, and yeah, we'll do that one.
Yeah,
The
it
wacky
was great. Yeah.
It's so funny, like that whole thing with McCartney and Lennon. So there was so much like McCartney just had so many ideas going on too. Like remember when they were like, okay, where are we gonna play? And then they said even before they were talking about Primrose Hill, that park, he was like,
Yep.
oh, we should just play at the House of Commons. Like we'll go in there with our amps, plug them in the wall, play like
Yep.
one or two songs, and then get the hell out. And we'll invite the newsmen, and they'll be like the real strict news, and then they'll say the news and the news.
He
And
wanted to
oh,
play in a place where they'd get thrown out, like a place
right,
where we're
yeah. And
restricted.
what did you think of the album that he came out with in 1973? Like band, I'm like, this is Band on the
Yep.
Run. This is
Yep.
absolutely Band on the Run. But then when they're playing at the end of the On the Roof thing, I'm
Yep. The
I'm literally
cops.
thinking, yeah, the cops come, and I'm thinking, Paul McCartney's dream has come true. He's getting
Yeah.
kicked off his own roof in downtown London because of the disturbing the peace, and he's sitting there with his bass, loving it. He's just like he's not
Yeah.
ashamed. He's not embarrassed. He doesn't. When I always think of McCartney as like the guy that's always trying to please everybody. This
Your
is like
mother don't like
McCartney.
that. She ought to have you arrested.
Yeah, exactly. This is the McCartney that's like, I'm a rock and roller. This is what I
A
do. And if
Beatle.
you're gonna shut me down, but I'm gonna have some fun. And people are loving it, so we're gonna do it. And it was in the words that he was singing on that like ad lib part. Like, and the cops are coming, Jojo, you better get going. I mean, I
Yep.
want to see that one again because it was just, and the police are so polite. Do you mind if I go upstairs? Do you mind if I go up there? Like the big boss man police is like,
What
so
about the receptionist? Well, they're doing a film for a live album.
you
This
know,
is going to
I'd go
be
up
on
there
it.
if I were you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
so polite, except the
But they
people.
also had the look that they had that look like Paul, that not just that he was playing, but like, we're the fucking Beatles, man.
Right,
We
exactly.
are the Beatles. I mean, what are you talking about? We're
We
up
own
here.
this town. We made
Yeah, this is history here.
like
This is
I
our
would have cared
first
about
live.
England before we came and just
Yep.
conquered the world. Now everyone
That
wants to
is
have a British accent.
that was such a great performance, though. I love the way they sounded up there.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was just so freaking cool.
and that they had to do that's the thing, like they had to keep doing the film thing because they would run out of film every 10 minutes. That's the
Yep.
magazines for the film. I mean, and they
Yep.
had 10 cameras, 9 or 10
Yep.
cameras. That's a
Yep.
whole hell of a lot of cameras. And once I learned that, and it's like this guy Michael Lindsay Hogue, I mean,
Yep.
he was really well connected. I guess Orson Welles was his dad or something, supposedly.
Wow.
but I mean that was because of some affair supposedly that his mom had. But and even
Wow.
the name Orson Welles came up early on in the movie. But
Mm.
but anyway, I mean the guy obviously was from money because usually filmmakers are a wreck, and this guy could care less. He's just like, record every who cares. His whole attitude was just like, well, we really have a movie right now, with George Levin. That's our movie, And I mean, it's like, wow,
You know, there was
you're kind of
one.
a scumball, dude.
Sam noticed one thing that I didn't notice. One scene where I don't know what they were doing or talking about, but they were sitting there, and John was sitting on that chair, and he had that fur coat hanging on the back of it, and he reaches back into it in the pocket, and he pulls out a joint, and he looks to the camera, and he looks like he's scared, like, oh shit, we're filming this, I better put it away just in case. He took it out, and he looked scared, John, for a split second. He takes it out, and he realizes that they're being filmed. And he's like, oh shit, and he puts it back. I didn't notice that, but Sam showed it to me, and I'm like, holy shit, I didn't notice that.
Which part was that? Was that part one?
I don't know, but Sam saw it. I think it's in part two, because they were already in the studio, not in the big Twickenham. They were at Apple already.
Oh my god!
But I just liked the fact that they had that guy Alex that was supposed to be designing all this special equipment, and they get there and it's just a pile of shit, And this guy's working for the Beatles, they got this guy that's just some nut. And he just happens to befriend them, and they're wasting money, giving him money for all kinds of shit,
Yeah. Oh my
But
gosh, that's terrible.
it's great. George Harrison said something that Alex once invented, something like a radio with like a toilet paper roller on it or something. He's crazy. Oh,
Oh yeah, then he brought in
oh,
those sticks with the strings all around it. Those.
oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
And everyone's like looking at it, going, "What am I going to do with this?"
Yeah. I like when Paul was playing the drums and Ringo took Paul's Hofner and he's just banging away on it.
Oh yeah, and Paul
You
actually
know what?
was showing him how to play too. Like you see that
You know
too.
what else is interesting is that all four of them could play some piano. I mean, Paul was a good piano player, but John could play piano. George, when he was playing Old Brown Shoe,
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe he was
yeah,
playing that
and
song. I
even
thought that
Ringo
song was played out already. Yeah.
when Paul and Ringo were playing together. I mean, they were
Oh
both
yeah,
like playing
yeah.
and Ringo was playing Octopus's Garden when he was showing them Octopus's Garden.
Gosh, yeah, that was so incredible.
Guys are fucking geniuses. I mean, and
Yeah.
this is what they come up with,
Right. Right.
Those four guys, we saw them do Let It Be, but think about it. Those four also in the studio came up with Sergeant Pepper, Revolver,
Oh yeah.
Rubber Soul, the White Album, Abbey Road,
Yeah.
you know?
It's incredible the output of what they did, and you could see it all there because they were working so hard. They took some time off when George left, but man, every day they were just pounding away at it.
I know, look at the time they lost. They didn't have much time and they lost time.
Jeez, they
What
were.
about the day after George left? The only one that showed up that morning was Ringo. He comes walking in, but like, oh, he's the only one here,
It's so true. It's like it's so. I mean, Ringo was such. I mean, he was like the audience too. Like he was the drummer,
He
but
was the rock.
yeah,
He was the rock.
like
He
McCartney
just
was
sits
playing
there
the
and
songs to him, and then he would be singing along, like, "Oh yeah, carry that weight," And Ringo
but
was
he'd
like the
also
perfect
be
guy.
he'd be paying attention like for the drum parts and stuff.
Yeah, and they never got
Like
credit for that. He never got a writing credit, and
they
his.
all kind of how many Lennon McCartney songs did Ringo and George contribute to
Oh yeah,
significantly?
absolutely. They all should have
And
been on
vice
that.
versa.
Right.
Vice
That-
versa.
oh
It's
yeah.
like Ringo
That's
wrote Octopus's Garden, but George kind of helped him with it.
right. Yeah, he said no. Go back to the beginning, like to resolve it, to go from here to there, and then
John
back.
Lennon said that he helped George write the middle part of Taxman, but
Taxman
didn't
and
get credit
something.
for it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They all did it, I guess. But when George only gets 2 songs per album, not even sometimes, it's like,
Yeah,
wow.
remember he said about the White Album, like, well, that's why the last one is the one that I really, contributed
Right.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like, The only song of his on the White Album that I really liked is While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yeah.
I don't go crazy over Piggies. I don't go crazy over Long, Long, Long
Yeah, I
or
like Long
Savory
Long Long.
Truffle. Yeah,
Savoy truffle is kind of a yeah, it's kind of a quirky kind of
yeah,
a
they're okay,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
While
yeah,
My
but that's
Guitar
a
Gently
classic.
Weeps.
Yeah, Eric
Yep.
Clapton with the Beatles. Yeah, how can you? But that's
Oh
the other
shit,
thing
yeah.
too. Now that George, I think George was. You could definitely sense George was getting tired of being a Beatle, and like you said, he wanted to go out and do his thing, and then come back. He was definitely into coming back. I mean, they were just so they couldn't separate themselves. I don't think from each other. But it would have been
But it's
interesting if
hard
they
to.
could have done that somehow. You
It,
know.
it's weird though. Like Yoko had said, I think it was only a few years ago. Like she was talking about, how amazing. Like they, she's like, it's amazing how four incredible artists like that could be contained, like within, in such a period of time like that. They did it. You
Right.
know.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. It was a phenomenon,
Yeah.
in their look too, the way they looked, and that's the weird thing too, is because I mean they really went from boy band, and I'm talking like New Kids on the Block style band,
Right.
but still really awesome songs. That's the thing. Like I Feel Fine, that's that's and this is what I was talking to my brother about is that you could sense George, right? You could sense that he didn't like the songs. He talks about like how the Beatles are in the doldrums or something. Remember that?
Right.
And he
Yeah.
didn't really like the songs. And that's
Yep.
tough to even talk about because it's like, well, there's some really good songs out there, George. I mean,
Yep.
granted, Paul McCartney just wrote Get Back right in front of your face with only two chords. And but I think what was really the real tough sledding of the whole thing was that George felt like in so many ways I think what he was talking about was there was really no riffs, no real rock hooks, you know? I mean, I think that
Mm.
if you think about the Let It Be album, there you had Lennon's I Dig a Pony with that riff. But there was
Right.
no like Your Blues. There was no really heavy rocker. Like even like I Feel Fine had that ding 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 ding
Oh,
ding
that's a
ding,
legendary, iconic.
legendary. And even
Yeah.
like Paperback Writer.
Yep.
So I feel like
Yep.
when we first see George in the first episode, it's like he's pissed because why? He's given a bunch of folk songs with just like strumming guitar, and it's almost like he's got to come up with some sort of beautiful guitar piece or something.
Yeah.
And even then he starts talking about like, well, you know how Eric Clapton would do it. He would start with the
Yep.
guitar piece, then add the
Yep.
song to the guitar piece, and then as
Yep.
they were going on and on and on, Lennon does the greatest line, and he says, "Well, we don't have Eric Clapton, but we got George Harrison, and what he does is pretty good, you know." Like, or
No, no,
he,
yeah. Well, George said we need Eric, and then John
yeah,
says we need George
we need
Harrison.
George Harrison. We
Yeah.
need George
Yep.
Harrison, and that even though it was like kind of a cutting remark, it was also he was giving him like a compliment in the same respect.
What about the lunch meeting between John and Paul? That was right. That's
That
pretty
was really
incredible.
cool. That was
Yeah, and
really
they didn't
nice.
know that was being recorded.
That is so.
So that is
That was
candid, you
special. That
know.
was just like, oh my, this is
And
like,
John sounded like he was really advocating for George, like, like
yeah.
understanding.
And but that was like definitely a meeting of the minds, right? So
Yeah.
McCartney only told John Lennon what to play one time in that movie, and that was in The Long and Winding Road. Remember that when he was playing
Yep,
the bass?
yep,
And he said,
yep.
just don't play that A there at that beat. All he did was he wanted
Right.
that removed a little bit, and that was
Yep.
fine. But you see Lennon's face, just like straight face, and then,
Yeah.
then he didn't do it. But the thing is about that, and it goes back to that meeting of the minds in the cafeteria when they have the dialogue, and
Yeah.
McCartney pushes him up, like he says, you're the leader. You're the leader of this thing. It's always been you. You've always been leading this thing. He's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of giving him like, come on, it's you that's leading, even though I'm the boss. You're the leader. Kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
because he's older, you know, and there's so much going on. But it was
And he
such
did start the band. I mean, it was
right. It was
John,
Johnny and the Moondogs. It was
the
John Lennon.
Quarrymen.
Yeah, the
The Quarry.
Quarrymen, and just like that that Lennon anger, like it's that Lennon anger that was like it was like that kind of punk rock thing. You know, they
That's
were
like Keith
ready.
Richards. Keith Richards said that John Lennon is more responsible for the British invasion and the Beatles and everything than anybody.
Yeah, it was just
That's
that
what Keith
zeitgeist,
Richards said. Yeah.
that will to do
Yep.
it, you know,
The
and
personality. He was such a cool
yeah,
guy. The other thing is when you're watching it, just the thought of how he died is so terrible. It's so terrible.
yeah,
It
because
is
it only
so,
was like 11 years after that. It's
yep. And
just
it's
11
so,
years.
so unnecessary and so psychotic and such a waste.
That's the thing because after 1980, after he gets into the studio again, that's when I actually thought like, oh, this could be a real thing. They could actually get
Yeah.
back together right now. And
I
then
didn't care about that, but John was talking about going on tour in the spring of 1981, and my friend Jack and I were like, "Oh my God, John Lennon is back! He's got a new album out. He's going on tour. We gotta go see him. You know,
that's
we gotta definitely." I don't remember talking to Bev about it at the time, but my friend Jack and I were talking about, "Oh, we gotta go see him if you know."
right. Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
what
Incredible.
times? Oh
Yeah.
shit! I didn't
Keep
realize what
going.
time. Like, I
Yeah.
gotta. I haven't had dinner yet.
Yeah, neither have I. I
Um,
gotta get something.
but we gotta discuss this some more though. This is like a
Oh,
tip
I
of the
know.
iceberg.
There's so much there. And I got to tell you, after the whole thing was over, I have to give a lot of credit to McCartney because he allowed a lot of this stuff where he didn't look all that great, you know, like a
Yep.
lot of his mannerisms and stuff. He just allowed it to happen. Like, yeah, you want it? That's the story. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the way it
They
was, you
wanted
know.
to show it like it was, but he wasn't. He had said though himself. You see, there was that scene where he says, "I don't like being like
The
the
boss.
like the yeah." He said, he goes, "I don't like having to," but he's like, he was saying something to the effect, I think that but Brian's not, we need somebody to say, "Hey, let's," And Ringo, I think, said that if it wasn't for Paul, he said the Beatles probably would have recorded like 2 albums, and that would have been it. He's like, because we all got like lazy. He goes, Paul was like the workaholic, like the one that was always, "All right, guys, we got to get into the studio and get to work. Ringo said the otherwise we'd all just stay around and sit around doing nothing.
Is that did he say
So
he didn't say it in the movie though, did it? Or was that in an interview?
no, no, he said it in an interview.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was in an interview I either read or I saw him saying that Paul was the one. Yeah, it was a recent interview that Ringo said if it wasn't for Paul, that the Beatles probably would have made 2 or 3 albums, and that would have been it.
That makes sense because in the first part, Lennon said, "I have my two songs. I'm good." Like it's
Yeah,
almost like I don't need to contribute anymore. McCartney's
yeah.
over there. Let it be. Let it be.
And when you talk about the songs that George didn't write, you notice when he came in to play Old Brown Shoe, and he tells him about, he says, "And this one's a rocker."
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
He emphasizes dun 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 dun
Yeah,
dun
yeah.
dun
And
dun
just
dun
him
dun dun.
talking about the piano too. Like he's like, you can't do this on guitar. You can't get those close notes.
Right,
Like it's
right.
just like, wow, that's some
Yep.
really amazing.
Fucking geniuses, man. Yoko is right. It's like, how does a band like that, where everybody's important in a band, like,
Right,
but I mean, like with the Beatles, like they were all important, but they're all like so mega.
right.
Like they
Yeah.
all were so mega.
Imagine John Lennon goes on to write Imagine and Number Nine Dream. Remember that album? That song?
Oh, not all of like the great music is Beatle and his form, right? George did so much great stuff.
Right.
Paul,
Yeah.
Ringo had some great hits. I mean,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
incredible.
It's
God
incredible.
bless them.
Phenomenal.
Baruch
Thank you.
Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Thank you for the Beatles,
Yes,
God.
yes, and the Zilba Beatles too, because they inspire us. That's right, Aki. Stairway to Heaven in a church service. Maybe I'll listen to that a little later. I wish to God that my guitar wasn't slightly out of tune, but it
We
still
can do it.
sounds okay though. It's not way off.
Right. I love it. I love
And
it.
it's not that I played the wrong notes or
Oh,
anything.
you were just.
I didn't
love
fuck
Rob.
up
Like
at
Rob,
all.
Remember in rehearsal, Rob's like, "How do you play that if you don't see the notes?" He is just
I know.
there. He is just-
Anything, that's but that there again, as crazy as it sounds,
That's your
I'm
gene.
I'm self-taught. I mean, I had a few lessons, and I was always ahead of what I was being taught, and I didn't bother with music, and I always felt when I played, not just by ear like that, but when I saw the Beatles playing, I wanted to be like them. You can't be like them if you got music in front of you. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It's just,
That's true.
but that's just the way I am.
That's the way they wrote
But,
down too the lyrics. They would write down the lyrics. Okay,
yep.
yeah, do that one.
They never had music written
No
down. They'd write
notes.
maybe
Yeah,
the chords
no,
A, C, G, F,
exactly.
and they just
It
had the
was
words.
magic. So
And
incredible.
you say, oh, I'm going to change that here to I dig a.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Gary, I love you. I love you, Aki.
Mwah, Achi!
Aki
God
Ahavti.
bless.
I will
Yes,
talk to you soon.
you better
Enjoy
believe it.
tomorrow. Let's get together next week. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tomorrow I got to do the minion. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
sad. Oh, God. When I went to the funeral last week, I was so sad.
Who,
Marilyn Andrews' mother. I mean, I've known her for like 30 years,
oh gosh, yeah.
Both of Marilyn's parents were so great. Her father, Stan, died 7 years ago, a few months after my dad died.
Oh God.
He died November 28th, 2014, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, jeez. Oh my God.
But Kathy was a sweetheart.
Wow.
Part of life. As long as your life is a blessing, you live forever.
Yeah,
You know,
there you go. God
but,
knows. God knows what we're doing.
yeah, that's right. Be a light. Be a light.
Be the light. Yes, absolutely.
Be a ner tamid.
Yes.
If your flame starts to flicker, rekindle it. Keep it burning. Keep it burning.
Amen.